Hi, friends. Welcome to Illuminate, an LGBTQIA plus storytelling podcast from the LGBTQIA plus ministry here at Christ Church NYC. For these few episodes of Illuminate, we will be sharing stories about queerness and spirituality. I often say that queerness, that which you see embodied in the lives and stories of LGBTQIA plus folk, that this queerness is good news for everyone. Because queerness illuminates for us all the reality that God has given us, one that is beyond binaries, that is more than monochrome, but full of eternal, living, colorful, and sacred love. Throughout these podcasts, we'll be hearing from stories of LGBTQIA plus folk about how they do life and how they do faith, and about how our queerness helps us all think about God. I'm excited that you're here with us today. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Tyler Heston, and I serve here at Christ Church as our Minister of Spiritual Formation and LGBTQIA plus development. A lot of syllables for a wonderful job. And it is a gift to be here for this podcast and to welcome our guest, John Fiscian, who will be sharing some stories and thoughts today. So John, would you introduce yourself a little bit more, who you are and how you come to this conversation today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tyler, for having me, first of all. And it's wonderful to speak with you today and to talk about myself a little bit and my story. So I am a New York City resident. I live on the Upper East Side near Christ Church, NYC. I've been a member for just over 2 years, and I started visiting about 2 months before that. So New York City is home now. I grew up in Georgia, but the city has my heart. And before I even lived in the neighborhood, now I live about an 18-minute walk from church. I was living in Harlem, and I was looking for a Methodist church and found Christ Church and visited here as well as other churches and kept coming back. It's a wonderful place. So it definitely has a special place in my heart and feels like my spiritual home completely.
Was another Southerner who's wandered his way up to New York. It is good to call this church home with you. So I'm excited, John, to hear what stories you have to share. We'll have some open conversation, but I've asked you to prepare a story that somewhat illustrates or illuminates what queerness and spirituality might mean to you, or what being a queer person of faith looks like. So why don't we get started with hearing that story?
Yeah. Being a queer person of faith means a lot of things simultaneously. And I think stepping away from the spiritual side for a brief moment, growing up, at least for me, I was always wrestling with, will I be supported and loved and celebrated for who I am, right? Before I even knew I identify as gay, cis man, before I knew the word gay or homosexual or any other term under the queer umbrella, I knew at the age of 6 how I felt, but I didn't have the vocabulary to label or identify just yet. And growing up in the church, my mom was Presbyterian, my dad was Baptist. They took us to a Baptist church in Greater Atlanta, and I knew how I felt at age 6, but I knew that it was wrong, and that was hard. I remember being in elementary school and middle school thinking, will I have to be celibate? Like, will I ever be able to be myself? I knew I couldn't marry a woman. I knew even then, I was like, that's just not, that'd be a lie. For
Totally.
me. Yeah. So it was from that young age, and I'm grateful for that awareness, all to God. But I feel like I knew who I was, but I wasn't sure if I could be accepted for who I was by my family or by teachers, educators, colleagues, what have you. So that being said, I grew up in typical suburbia. We grew up in a county just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, predominantly white, but pretty diverse, really. Lots of immigrant families, descendants of immigrants, and just very average community. I feel like it was almost like a television neighborhood in a way, because everyone was just like pretty normal, happy, kind. I don't think I ever got bullied, which I am very shocked to say. except for one time when I was in sixth grade, and this plays a part in the main theme of my story, when someone called me homosexual, and even then I didn't know they were talking about the fact that I liked guys. So
That's just
other
too
than
big a
that,
word.
yeah, I was like, what? It happened so fast. I didn't know what was going on. But now, other than that, I didn't get bullied. But say all that to say, my school system was very accepting and loving and nurturing. The educators there are phenomenal. They are the ones that helped me realize I wanted to pursue acting and a life in the arts. So, with that, when I was getting ready to go to high school, they offered a summer session of health and PE so that we had more room for our electives. I had sang in the chorus from fifth grade all through middle school, and then I was going to do 4 years in high school. And then because I also knew I wanted to do theater classes, which I didn't have room in my schedule for until junior year. But that being said, I took health and PE over the summer so I could sing in the chorus. And my chorus teacher at the time, she was Edwards, Joyce Edwards. And then she got remarried to Chittick. She saw me running and hustling. I was also a chunky kid growing up. So I think I'd met her because I'd shadowed my friend Sammy, who was a year ahead of me. And I'd been in her chorus class the previous year. So she knew I wanted to sing, and I'd gotten to meet her there, and that I was making room in my schedule to take chorus. And more than anything, I just wanted to feel like the people that I adored and trusted celebrated me and saw me. But at the same time, I was too scared to like explicitly say I'm gay. So I didn't come out until freshman year of college. But this course teacher and I, Joy, have remained friends since high school. I went to college in Colorado to study musical theater, and then I moved to New York. And then I briefly went back to Georgia for about 4 years. My dad was sick, and I was a staff singer at her church. She was retired. She was done with public school chorus teaching, but then their choir director stepped down, so she, strapped on her boots and like conducted the chorus, the choir, and she hired me as a staff singer. And still, all that time, I will say I don't think they identify as a reconciling church. It's a Presbyterian church in the Stone Mountain area of Georgia, but they never said anything hurtful or hateful. There's another staff singer named Amanda who is also, she's a lesbian and out and married to a woman. So it felt really safe and really good. But still, I hadn't fully come out or explicitly come out to my course teacher, Joy. And not that I don't think I needed to at that point in my life, but I just think it's very interesting that I still couldn't say to her, I'm gay, I'm out and proud, even though I was and am. And it wasn't until Thanksgiving of this year when I went home to Fort Worth, Texas to visit my boyfriend's parents, that we were texting. Her birthday is November 21st. And I was in Texas, and I texted her happy birthday, and she texted me a picture of her newborn grandson, and we were catching up. And she was like, I don't know much of your personal life, but I hope you have found someone special. And I just took the opportunity then to say, well, actually, I'm texting you from my boyfriend's parents' house in Fort Worth. We're flying back to New York in a few days. And she immediately responded, yes, finally. And then I texted her a picture of us, and she was like, handsome, both of you are. So that felt really good because now I'm so comfortable coming out, right? Whether people assume or don't assume or know or what have you, and sharing about my identity. But I find that it has been hard to come out to folks that knew me growing up, particularly ones that really poured into my life and into who I am. And to hear her or to read her words and just to know that she was accepting and supportive was so lovely. And it really made me think, like, I don't need to be so nervous or ashamed that people who knew me before I was ready to come out don't accept me, because chances are they probably do.
Mhm,
I doubt they'd be in my life today if they didn't, but
mhm,
it's
mhm.
always nice and reassuring to hear and read words of affirmation. So that's my story, and it was like I felt that was like the best Thanksgiving. I was with people I loved, the person I love, and this other person who has really formed a lot of my character. Uh, you know, being open with her in that way was lovely. So that was a wonderful Thanksgiving treat.
That is such a treat. And I love that your story spans decades, spans the year. Isn't it wacky how in those moments, like time suddenly collapses and it's like there is no distance between those high school choir days and Thanksgiving 2023. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Thank you, John. I love that.
Thank
Well, that's
you.
oh, there's so many things I'm thinking about now, and from like your connections to how like coming out is not just about like owning this one facet of our identity or showing someone, well, this is essentially who I am, but more
Mhm.
about this greater desire that we all have in our own ways of being adored, celebrated, and seen for who we truly are. But as LGBTQ people, we do have to come out, and there is like some of the scholarship I read, some of the the work I entertain in my academic journey has talked about like there is no singular coming out. Like we talk about these coming out narratives as if there's this one moment in which we go from not being out to being out. And some of us have more like specific stories like that, but others of us don't. And I think what you just shared showed how it takes time and it unfolds, and it does not need to be a linear path. It's not like we owe the rest of the world this one moment in which we suddenly say, "This is who I am, deal with it," because our identities are unfolding like we are. But one of my first questions, which is not one of the questions that I prepared for you, is just like think about how it took until this last Thanksgiving to Joyce was her name, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Name explicitly to Joyce. Here's my boyfriend. Like, yes, I am gay, like you thought I was. I wonder, like, looking back, do you wish you had done that earlier, or is like, or does it feel like it was all in its right time? Like, there's no
I
right
think,
answer.
yeah, I think I don't think I wish I'd done it sooner. Maybe to alleviate, maybe subconscious thoughts, but it felt right and natural and it felt safe when it happened. So, yeah, I don't think I would have um, said anything sooner, but it feels good to have said it.
Yeah, yeah. Just a reminder to anyone who may be listening and to me that like yeah, it does not need to be a linear path or a there's no proper process and procedure for coming out, and how what you said in that Thanksgiving did not subtract or change or anything, but just added to the meaning of those 4 years that you were back in Atlanta singing with her in that church choir. Like that was what it needed to be in that season, and you
Mhm.
didn't need to make anything else explicit because there was a coming out, a coming into your true self with that. And yeah, that's
Right.
beautiful. Oof, and I love the yeah that it took singing in a church choir without it needing to be as explicitly named as it could have been to help that
Hmm.
celebration and adoration grow around you. Like it is all a process.
Hmm.
So one of the things I'm thinking about too is how our spirituality is thus something that we don't do on our own, but we need other people who can see us even before we can fully see ourselves, to feel that we are adored and celebrated and known and loved. But thinking yeah, like so one of the questions I like tossed to you before we recorded today was the question, what does spirituality mean to you? I'm so thinking especially along with this story and the role of Joyce in your life, how like does this story teach you about spirituality, or how might it help you fashion a definition of spirituality?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many good thought points there. I feel like spirituality for me encompasses the relationship I have with Jesus Christ, and that adds to the peace that I have in many
Mm,
parts of my life, and the hope where there may not be peace. Uh, and that ties into my story with Joyce, particularly because there was always the hope that Joyce or anyone else that I loved would know me, see me, and accept me, right? But until you have those conversations, or until you step out on faith, you don't know, right? And I think that's similar in my relationship with Christ and walking with Him. I think, and I long ago I made the or decided that I fully believed in God. Like, I'd been baptized as a baby in the Methodist way, um, uh, and I definitely found in July of 2017, I was like, yep, I know for sure that I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe Christ died for us. And having that unwavering faith has brought me so much peace and so much hope, um, that I know that no matter what comes my way, there is someone out there who loves me and who is ordering my steps. I definitely believe that I believe a few things. Everything happens for a reason. I believe that, we can change our fate. I think that God is here among us to help us whenever we need, and in the way that we call Him to do so. I, you know, I fully believe that if you ask for what you need, we'll get it. Maybe not exactly the way we thought we would, or in the time that we thought we would, but He's there. He's supporting us. He's with us, and that's something I deeply, deeply believe. And wanting to believe that the loved ones, the humans on this earth that we share time with, do the same, I think is such a yearning that many LGBTQIA plus people feel, because we want to feel a sense of belonging. But when you're other in any number of ways, when you're marginalized in any number of ways, that's hard to believe. And that's why a lot of, LGBTQ plus people have left the church. And I find that spirituality to me means owning that I am here, that I'm held, and that
Mm.
I and my life have purpose. So, and I think, I used to be really like nervous about saying like I'm a Christian or I believe in God to certain circles, but now it's just like I am not ashamed of it at all. It's a part of who I am. The fact that I am gay and Black and whatever else on top, I think is so important for people to see. And it sparks conversations where people are like, oh, yeah, you're a nice guy, but I wouldn't think that you being gay also follow Christ. Like, and that's good. The older I get, the more I'm not trying to have like a deep intersectionality conversation every moment of the day, but it is so important, because if I weren't out
100%.
and authentic about who I am, people wouldn't even think about it for the 5 minutes that they did, maybe. It's so important, and it's important that we're seen and that we're unafraid and that we share our spirituality, because it is important and it is contributive to our personhood and what we bring to our lives and to our relationships. So I think there's a lot there in what spirituality means to me. And I think for any queer person of faith, it's really remarkable and such a sense of strength when we're able to accept it to ourselves, A, to live in it, B, and then to share it, C. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oof, you said something there that maybe my new definition of spirituality, that it's about knowing that you are held, and not just by others around you or by your physical or temporary circumstances, but by the God from which all this world came in the first place, being held. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Thank you.
thank you.
So another question I was prepared to volley you was, what does queerness mean to you? But to prelude that, one of the things I really, yeah, I liked about your story is from the beginning, you had a visceral knowing that you were different, that like there was this cookie cutter, this paradigm, this mold, this way of being that wasn't gonna work out for you, which is something I've talked about even preparing for this podcast myself a lot. That like even before we know what the word homosexual is, or what queerness or lesbian, gay, bisexual, all this vernacular that we use, before those words are even a part of our lives, like we know viscerally that there's something different. It makes me think about one of my favorite scholars, someone named Jose Munoz, defines queerness not as an identity, but as an ideality. He says that this is not about some label that we can put on ourselves that some people have and some people don't, or it's not this static thing that we weren't until we came out. It's not like, oh, I'm gay now because I'm out. And that, like, this queerness is a process that was there from when we were 6 years old to realizing we were different to the moment in which that mentor of ours finally got the data that she had been looking for about our lives. That queerness is bigger than a specific identity, but rather it's a response to the world we live in and a choosing to not do things just because they are normal, saying like, no, I can do things my own way. Um, yeah, I really appreciate like like that the full picture that you gave of that visceral knowing to learning to articulate things for yourself, but it's not like those things were real before you had the words for them, which points out that we do need labels, we do need words because they help us move forward, but labels are ladders on a rung towards a greater self-understanding, and it's that self-understanding that's important, not necessarily the labels themselves. But if you were to define queerness in your own words, what might that definition be?
Queerness is acceptance of difference.
Hmm.
I think, and that is pretty simple, but I think for me, when I really think about it, it's really sitting in being other than and being comfortable with it.
Hmm.
And even the word itself, it used to be, derogatory and, not used by our community. But when you, in any facet of your life, are accepting of whatever it is that is a part of you, not solely you, but a part of you, that I think is where the power comes in. And I think queerness is a peace and tranquility in accepting that we are different, and
Mhm.
and not in a conventional way, right? It's not brown hair versus red versus blonde. It's simple, but it's also ever encompassing of our lives. So I think for me, it's very innate and very simple and personal. And yeah, I think that's just how I embody queerness. I'm out, I'm proud, um, but I'm not always like the most vocal about my identity. And I have many friends who are, and I love that. But for me, it's a quiet knowing and acceptance and peace.
Mhm.
So.
Oh, I love that. Which being held in that difference. Connect back to what you were saying, and I love it's not just being different or being other than, but being comfortable with it too. And that's
Mhm,
hard because the normative patterns of this world teach us that difference is something to be uncomfortable with, and
mhm,
it's really easy to police ourselves and teaching ourselves, well, I'm going to change a little so I'm more comfortable, versus learning to just be comfortable with those differences.
mhm.
I love it. Well, with those two definitions of queerness and spirituality in mind, I wonder, what do you think or like, how does being LGBTQIA, how does being gay, how does queerness teach you about God? And what might other people of faith who don't identify as LGBTQ or see queerness necessarily as something that they can use to describe their own life? What do you think that your story, that your insights at this intersection of queerness and spirituality might teach other people of faith, Christians or just anyone beyond that too, about what life and faith might look like?
I would hope that people can see and at least be curious about knowing that there's nothing that we can do that can separate us from God's love.
Mm-hmm.
Like full stop. There's, we even if we're for folks who are on the journey of coming out, if they choose to, when they choose to, you're exactly who you're meant to be. You're loved, you were designed for a reason. Your life has purpose and you matter. And you existing is not something to be ashamed of or to lose sleep over. I say that, but I've definitely done that for years, and there's just no need because we wouldn't be here the way we are if we weren't supposed to be. So I would hope that people would listen to this series and all of our stories and my story and know that God is truly for us. No matter where you are on your faith journey, no matter where you are on your self-acceptance journey, no matter where you are in terms of making a pivot in your life. Maybe you've done, bad things or said bad things or what have you, but you're never too far gone, ever. And if it's not enough to believe that someone ethereal loves you, I can say that I love you. I know many people at Christ Church love you. God is love. And that's what I want the whole world, the whole broken, healing world to know, is that there's no need to be rude. There's no need to be, reactive. There's no need to be afraid of something that's different. We all just need to know and believe that we are here, we have purpose, and that something that is unknown is not scary or bad. It's just unknown.
Even those unknowns within ourselves, because we are mysteries to ourselves sometimes, and
Oh yeah.
we
Yeah.
don't have to have this figured out before we are loved. Like, we are loved first.
Hmm.
That's it. That phrase, "I am held," I think I will be sitting with after this podcast recording today. But that is like such the good news, the gospel of queerness for all people, is that you are held exactly in who you are. But I think one of the things I really love about your story is that we need people to remind us of that. It's not enough to read in a book or read on a piece of paper that we are held by the God who created this world and by the people around us, but we need people to hold us so that we know that we are held, and we need to be that person for other people as well.
Hmm.
And not just allies for gay people or the in crowd for the marginalized, but all of us seeing ourselves as interwoven in this web of the human family together. I think the more we do that, the more we realize that we're all different. We're all weird. There is no in and out, but we're all held together exactly as we are. Which, hallelujah, that's gospel if I've ever done heard it.
Oh, well, I'm glad. I fully believe it, and we do need each other. We do need to be examples for one another and to help, even when we don't feel like we can. Just showing up and being ourselves is more than help enough.
Hmm. And holding people to it, like, just it's really hard to think how Joyce was there for you and never pushed you to come out, never said, like, tell me this, tell me that, but held you just as you are. Like, I think especially as a minister of LGBTQIA plus development, or just as I've had other people from my own world come out to me, or like reach out to me as they're in their coming out process. Part of me's wanted to be like, well, what are you? Like, what label are you gonna use? Like, can I
Yeah.
help you along this? And sometimes people need a little pushing, sure, maybe, but like, that's not what's important. But that presence and being there, and well, every little LGBTQ kid needs to be seen not just for that one facet of their identity, but for all of who they are. And that's
Mhm.
the same people in my life who have stayed with me from the sophomore, I think, in college, when I finally came out, sophomore, junior. And like, I lost some friends in that process, and they were friends that did not see me for who I was. And me coming out as gay was not really the issue, but brought to light, I think, a bigger issue. But then there were people in my life who stuck with me, who I still keep up with to this day, who some of them were surprised because they were like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that as a possibility, because the
Right.
South in the early aughts and the mid aughts. But two, there were people who were like, oh, I knew, I was just waiting for you.
Yeah.
One of my best friends was visiting me a few weeks ago, and she was the first person who said, finally, when I came out to her. But those years in which we were friends, I felt seen and loved by her, and she knew that she couldn't push me to come out because it wouldn't have worked. But what I needed in that moment, what I need to this day, is not someone's like, oh, I like you because you're gay, but rather like, oh, you're Tyler, and I hold you and all of who you are. And
Hmm.
God don't just love us because we're gay or not, that God loves us and all of who we are, which means celebrating
Exactly.
these sometimes difficult parts of our experiences as well.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, any other thoughts or benedictions as we come to the end of this episode?
Just thank you. I think this is wonderful. And one of the many reasons that I love Christ Church is that we do engage in real conversations and meaningful conversations. And I think this is a great testament to the spirit of our church. And I know I am so happy that you've joined Christ Church and that you're a minister here and that you've spearheaded this ministry. I'm so thankful for you. And I'm hopeful that a lot of people listen to this series and glean glimmers of hope and
Mm,
of acceptance and love, because this is definitely an effort of love and
mm.
of love, and it's transformative. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your story, for your wisdom, for yourself, and bringing all of you to this little podcast and to who we are at Christ Church, gleaning glimmers of hopes together. Stories are salvific, and we will have plenty of other chances to glean glimmers of hope together, even throughout this podcast and beyond. Next month is Pride Month, and we have a lot of different things that we are doing to share far and wide our story at Christ Church. So not only do we have Illuminate this podcast, but we will have Illuminate the Pride service, which will also be celebrating queer stories of spirituality. That's Thursday night, June 27. But check our website, friends, for everything we'll be doing in Pride Month and beyond, because this is a story that we are continually sharing and telling and retelling and restoring throughout all of who we are at Christ Church and the LGBTQIA plus ministry and beyond. But thank you again, John, for your voice and your story today, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.